Himalayan Compute is a tech startup. It is a one-trick pony. It has one product, or it will have one product, which is compute. What is compute? When you push electricity through the NVIDIA GPU chips, you get compute. If you were to see a light bulb that is on, or a motor that is running, or a fan that is running, you would think there's some electricity involved. Similarly, if you see AI anywhere, if you see artificial intelligence anywhere, you can similarly assume there is compute involved anywhere. You could be using OpenAI's ChatGPT or Google's Gemini or Anthropic's Claude or Grok, and dozens of others, including Tesla's self-driving, which is also AI. Behind all that AI is compute. The demand for that compute is huge, unmet, and exploding. The demand for that compute is huge, like enormous, like gigantic, and it is unmet, meaning everybody who will supply, every supplier will get bought. Anybody who can bring compute to the market will sell it. The demand is huge, unmet, and exploding, even as it is unmet. I've never seen a product like this, never in my lifetime, in no sector of the economy. In no country. Forget just in my lifetime. I've never come across a product like this anywhere in history in my readings. Not even bandwidth compares, right? When the internet first hit the masses, we had narrowband. Somebody would send you a picture over email because that's how photos got shared. And it take you like 2 full minutes to download that one picture because we had narrowband. We did not have broadband. And the demand for that narrowband was huge and exploding. Well, we went on to have broadband, and the demand for that broadband was huge and exploding, and it is still exploding. We still don't feel like we have enough bandwidth. That's why 4G is not enough. We want 5G. 5G is not enough. We want 6G. But even that bandwidth at best is a metaphor, that explains the demand for compute. But the demand for bandwidth and the demand for compute does not even compare. The demand for compute is much, much larger. What's GPU? NVIDIA, the most valuable company in the world today. They have this product called GPU, graphical processing unit. If you have ever used a laptop or a personal computer of any kind, you should know the key part of that laptop, that computer, that personal computer is something called the CPU, Central Processing Unit. That is the brain of your computer. Well, GPUs are successors to that CPU because GPUs can do much more than what CPUs can. In fact, GPUs were brought to the market because the CPUs were not good enough for video gaming, and video gaming was taking off. In fact, it took off so well, it eclipsed movies as an entertainment medium. Dollar for dollar, gaming overtook movies. That was a long time ago. Because movies you just watch, you sit and watch, but with a video game you are interacting, you are part of the movie, you are actively making decisions, and people seem to like that. So when video gaming came along, GPUs came along because CPUs were not good enough. The central processing unit of the laptops and the computers, personal computers, were not good enough for video gaming. And as things go, NVIDIA kept improving on the product, making it more and more powerful. So when AI came along, well, AI didn't come along, AI has been around for decades. But when AI hit the masses, right, when it exploded and became mainstream among the masses, it became mainstream among the ordinary people. And GPUs came very handy. It was just the right product at the right time. So if you have ever used a laptop, you know that the brain of that laptop is your CPU, Central Processing Unit. Well, when you make that much more powerful, you end up with GPUs, Graphical Processing Units. They are chips. So when you stack a bunch of those chips, you call them a rack. And then when you stack a bunch of those racks, that is an AI data center. So Himalayan Compute is going to focus on bringing more compute to the market. Why did I pick this product? Well, multiple reasons. I guess the obvious is you want to bring something to the market that has huge, proven demand. You could argue the revolutionary products tend to create and invent that demand. But when there already is demand, an unmet demand, a huge demand, an exploding demand, then that's a good product to focus on. But it also brings a few different things together for me. The number one bottleneck why the demand for compute is not being met is electricity. Number one. Number two, of course, the chips. But the way things go with chips is the people who buy compute, they also buy those chips in advance, years in advance, right? So it can be argued the number one bottleneck as to why the demand is not being met is for compute is electricity. America produces a lot of electricity, but all that electricity was already being used for other purposes before AI data centers came along. That is why it has become such a politically hot issue. Because like you enter into a market and you build an AI data center, the demand for electricity goes up, and guess what? The price goes up. And ordinary people don't like that. Ordinary customers don't like that. And why would they? I grew up in Nepal. I was born in India and I grew up in Nepal. The thing is, the part of Nepal that I grew up in is split in two. That cultural unit, just like Punjab got split into two by the British. There's a Punjab, half of Punjab is in India, the other half is in Pakistan. Similarly, Bengal got split by the British. Half of it, well, some of it is in India, most of it is in Bangladesh, right, which used to be Pakistan. Similarly, Kashmir has been split. Some of Kashmir is in India, some is in Pakistan. People know about Punjab, people know about Bengal, people know about Kashmir, but people tend not to know about Mithila, where I am from. Mithila also is a culturally rich region, just like Punjab, just like Bengal, just like Kashmir, and it also was split by the British. So a chunk of Mithila is in Bihar, which is the second most populous state in India, and a chunk of it is in Nepal. So my mother is from the Indian part of Mithila, where I was born, in a hospital in Darbhanga. That's the name of the city, Darbhanga, in the state of Bihar. I have a cousin who was born in that same hospital one day after I was born. He is today a major movie star in Nepal. He's an actor. So, I grew up in Nepal. My father's side of the family is, has been in Nepal for generations. I did my high school in Kathmandu, which is the capital city of Nepal. It was the best school in the country. It was the national school, partly run by the government of Nepal. And graduates of that school you had to sit for nationwide entrance exams to be able to get admitted to that school. And graduates of that school have gone to pretty much every top college, university, and company across the US. Pretty much everyone. So I did my high school in Kathmandu and I came to the United States for college. I did my undergraduate studies in the United States. The Nepal that I grew up in is number 2, right after Brazil, in terms of how much potential it has for hydroelectricity. You can imagine, all these fast flowing rivers that originate from the glaciers in the Himalayas. The Himalayas and Tibet together are called the third pole. There's the North Pole, there's the South Pole, and there's the third pole, and that pole, the Himalayas and the Tibetan Plateau together are called the third pole. And all sorts of rivers originate in the Himalayas, and that is why, because of that plentiful water, half of humanity lives in that region. You have to count India, you have to count China, and everything in between. I think more than half of humanity lives drinking the water that comes out of the Himalayas. So Nepal, because of all those fast flowing rivers that originate in the Himalayas, the Himalayan mountains, it has a huge potential for hydroelectricity. And now, when in the global economy, in the American economy, the number one bottleneck for compute, the most high demand product in the global economy today, in the American economy today, the number one bottleneck to generating that compute is electricity, and Nepal has this huge potential for hydroelectricity. Do you see where I'm going? Right? The global market needs electricity for its highest demand product, and Nepal can supply that electricity. Nepal can produce some of that electricity. And I grew up in Nepal, which gives me a home base advantage. And it's not just an entrepreneur thinking profits. It's more than that. Early in 2005, the king of Nepal pulled a coup and became a military dictator. For the next year and a half, of the hundreds of thousands of Nepalese all across the US, I was the only full-timer to have worked for Nepal's democracy movement at that time. The end result was this 19-day mass movement when fully 1/3 of the country showed up in the streets and brought democracy back to Nepal. It was a beautiful thing. So obviously I care deeply about Nepal's welfare. And Nepal is a poor country. It was a poor country when I was growing up. It is a poor country today. It is one of the poorest countries in the world. It is one of the poorest countries in Asia. So, if you're going to work for democracy in Nepal, the glaring issue, that strikes you in the face is poverty. You look for ways to bring development and prosperity to the country without losing, the rich cultural heritage, the rich history and traditions, the strong family values, and the abundant agriculture and the traditionally healthy lifestyle. You don't want to lose what you have, but you do want to gain things that you don't have. Like prosperity, for example, would be nice. It would be nice. And so now it feels to me like Nepal has won the lottery, because Nepal is capable of generating a lot of electricity, like 50,000 megawatt, right? 50 gigawatts. That's a lot. So Nepal is capable of generating a lot of electricity, and that electricity is the number one bottleneck as to why the highest demand product in the global economy, in the American economy, it needs that electricity. Compute needs electricity. If we can produce more electricity, we'll have more compute. And electricity tends to be about 10 times cheaper in Nepal than it is in the United States. 10 times. That's a huge margin. And compute is 20 times more expensive, roughly, than electricity. So Nepal currently generates surplus electricity and sells some of that to India. Well, if India is your only market, how much bargaining could you possibly do? But when you generate compute, not only is it 20 times more expensive than electricity, you can sell it in the global market because you just have to take it online. When you export electricity to India, you need wires to carry that electricity. With compute, you don't need that. You just take it online, which means the compute generated in Nepal could be sold to companies all over the world. And because of that competitive landscape, you will be able to fetch a good price. Although I've been approaching potential mega customers, people like Sam Altman of OpenAI on Twitter, I've been tweeting at him. His co-founder Greg Brockman of OpenAI, and others like the Google CEO Sundar Pichai, available on Twitter, active on Twitter. Microsoft CEO Satya Nadella, fairly active on Twitter. Once in a while you will see him. He is not as active as Vinod Khosla, who seems to tweet every day, several times a day, but he's there somewhere. So I've been tweeting at my potential mega customer saying, I offer you the cheapest compute in the world. You might ask, do you have it? Do you have it already? No, I don't. But then neither does SpaceX. SpaceX just signed a contract just a few weeks ago with Anthropic and Google to sell them compute at 2 to 3 times the current price, which shows the demand for compute is exploding. As in the price in a year will be higher than what it is today, right? Because the demand is exploding. So SpaceX signed a contract with Anthropic and Google, offering them compute, not today, but in 6 months, 8 months, like later. Similarly, I've been approaching my mega customers, my potential mega customers like OpenAI, Microsoft, Google, Anthropic, and a bunch of smaller names, saying, hey, I bring you the cheapest compute in the world. SpaceX will make you wait 6 months. Me, I might make you wait, 2 years. What's 2 years between friends? So that is the pitch. And I've been pitching on Twitter. I kind of like Twitter. You keep it brief, you keep it to the point, and the whole world sees it. If not now, then later. When I tweet at Sam Altman, I embed that tweet into my blog post, my tech blog, so posterity can see it that I did pitch Sam Altman. And so this is a tech startup. I've studied tech startups more than anything else. The entire time that I've been in the United States, that's the number one thing that I've studied, more than anything else, by a wide margin actually. But I've also been a very political person. Group dynamics is my thing. Vision, leadership, group dynamics, team building, running teams, motivating people, that has been one of my things. I remember during my class 10 year, which would be like the sophomore year of high school in the American system, I was house captain. It was a boarding school, and I was house captain of one of the boarding houses. And we did pretty good. It was quite an extraordinary year. One British teacher wrote, he said, "I've never seen morale raised this high in any boarding house ever, not in England and not in Nepal." I thought that was quite a compliment. When I showed up in the US as an undergrad, within 6 months of landing at the #1 liberal arts college in the American South, I got myself elected student government president within 6 months of landing. So group dynamics is my thing. And like I said, in 2005, 2006, for a year and a half, I was the only full-timer among all the hundreds of thousands of Nepalese in the US at the time who did full-time work for the democracy movement in Nepal. Also, a few years later, I was Barack Obama's first full-time volunteer in all of New York City. When I say that, some people say, "But how do you know? It's a big city." I'm like, well, I went to the very first meeting of volunteers, I don't know, 30, 40 people, and in that crowd, I was the only full-timer. That's how I know. So, group dynamics is my thing. So how does a group dynamics person, a political person, end up doing a tech startup? Well, like I said, I've studied tech startups more than anything else during my time in the United States. But yes, I'm a political person. Well, lucky me, because for this project, for this tech startup, for Himalayan compute, the #1 bottleneck is not lack of talent. The #1 bottleneck is not lack of capital. The #1 bottleneck is the politics in Nepal, the bureaucracy in Nepal. Nepal's bureaucracy has been traditionally corrupt. In fact, so corrupt, the Gen Z in Nepal, only a few months ago, they ignited a revolution, and it was quite a revolution. A government was brought down in like 12 hours. A 2/3 majority government that was corrupt, like fully corrupt, was brought down by the Gen Z in Nepal in like 12 hours, 16 hours, something like that. It was pretty dramatic. It was a revolution to wipe out corruption from Nepal. A few months later, elections were held, and a new political party in the leadership of Nepal's now Prime Minister, who is the youngest head of state in the world, Balen Shah. He is now Prime Minister, and for the first time in my life, it feels like good governance has become possible in Nepal. He swept. It was a sweeping victory. They managed to cross the 2/3 mark. Pretty impressive, very impressive. So because of this new mandate, that gives me confidence that good governance has now become possible in Nepal, and harnessing Nepal's electricity will become possible now. Not only am I someone who has studied tech startups, tech cycle after tech cycle after tech cycle, and when you do that, when you study tech startups, tech cycle after tech cycle after tech cycle after tech cycle after tech cycle, it is so obvious right now is the absolute best time If you go back decades, right now is the absolute best time when to launch a tech startups. Why? Because it has become possible to tackle the biggest problems in the world. It has become possible to tackle the biggest challenges in the world. Big things have become possible. So right now is the absolute best time to start a tech startup. It was not 10 years ago, it was not 5 years ago, it was not 20 years ago, it was not 30 years ago, it is today. Big things have become possible. And for this particular tech startup, Himalayan Compute, my strength in group dynamics, my strength in terms of my political background, in terms of my political experiences, are coming handy because the number one bottleneck is political for this tech startup. It is about tackling the fairly complex politics and bureaucracy in Nepal that has traditionally been corrupt, but a few months ago Nepal saw an amazing Genji revolution, which the very theme was wipe out corruption from the country, and that movement now has a mandate. Balen Shah, the youngest head of state in the world. Balen Shah, the obvious choice of the new generation in Nepal. Balen Shah, who secured a 2/3 majority for his party in the elections that were organized just a few months ago. That Balen Shah, the youngest head of state in the world today, is the most impressive political figure to have emerged in Nepal in my lifetime. There have been many popular leaders along the way. You win elections by becoming popular, but mostly people win and then they disappoint. Balen Shah, who was mayor of the capital city, Kathmandu, before he became prime minister. He became more popular as mayor after winning the election because he actually delivered. He got stuff done. And so I'm very hopeful as to his prime ministership. Balen also happens to be my cousin. His grandfather and my grandmother were siblings, and so he is my cousin, but that is a small detail. The big detail is that he is the most promising political figure to have emerged in Nepal in my lifetime. That is the big detail. Also for this company, my roadmap says we'll be asking for a one-desk policy in the Prime Minister's office, as in everything this company needs to get done, no matter which ministry, no matter which level of government, we will approach that one desk in the Prime Minister's office, and it will be the job of that desk to get it done at speed. In return, what the company will give is 10% ownership in the company to the government of Nepal. This tech startup has a roadmap of hitting $1 trillion valuation in 10 years, roughly. 10% of that is a lot of money. That's $100 billion. The GDP of Nepal right now is about $50 billion. So that 10% equity stake is quite something. The government of Nepal could turn that into a sovereign wealth fund, like the Gulf countries have and the other oil-rich countries have. So that is what the government of Nepal get in return for the one desk policy that the company has asked for. I'm optimistic, I'm positive. I think Nepal will now see good governance for the first time in my lifetime. And that is all we ask for. In fact, it is indispensable. This ambitious project is not possible without good governance in Nepal.